Hi, welcome to Self Generated. My name's Steve. I'm the host and creator of this podcast. And if you've been listening so far, we're kind of doing a rehash of my original long form episodes. I have about 4 or 5 hours, actually, no, about 6 or 7 hours of long form videos on YouTube that kind of go over these ideas. I'm just kind of rehashing them now in a real short form way to put them out there. And we're going to be continuing to explore and try to find ways to connect with people and help each other figure out who we are, why we're here, and not some bullshit kumbaya kind of way, in a real practical way where you can be better, be more free, be able to understand some of the craziness that's going on in this world, or if not, at least understand it, not cripple you, you not be afraid of it, and be able to, in no small part, see the bullshit through it to the valuable lessons that can be learned to allow yourself to empower yourself to live a better life. And then, everything else after that is bonus country, right? And the episode I'm kind of rehashing now is of the idea of prehistory, which I explored that when you really think about it, humans have been around for hundreds of thousands of years as is, and that this exploration of this idea is core to what I'm talking about. There's some of us who can take that idea and go, hey, yeah, sure, all right, interesting. Maybe I don't know. I'll look, I'll trust, I'll see if it's valid information, I'll make judgments based off of that. And then there's a lot of us who go, no, bullshit, fuck you, or 7,000 years, die in a fire, you're going to go in hell. There's a lot of people like that. It's not just hardcore Christians. There's in Islam and in a lot of other circles and in people who aren't even religious. Just if the story you have of the world does not match their narrative, that's it. Game over. You can no longer communicate. You can no longer be friends. And that is core to what we're talking about. There's just two types of people. If you want to look at it in that way, there's those that can allow the world to be what it is, and there's those that can't. And it's through active inference you can understand that. And I was one of those people who couldn't. I couldn't allow the world to be what it was. I had to figure it out. I had to know everything. If it was outside of my purview, I wouldn't feel comfortable. My anxieties were true, and I had to master them, and so forth, so on. When I allowed myself to have fucked up, and the fact that I had fucked up does not define me now, but what my future actions are at that moment is what defines me. And if I don't want to repeat them, then I need to be knowledgeable and present and take responsibility for my actions and truly empower myself from what happened and empower myself from my own history, my own personal history of what actually happened. And that ties to the idea of prehistory, is instead of me wanting to follow my wanting of what my history to be versus my actual history, and finding truth and comfort and finding out the realities therein, I was empowered. I was freed. And that is in no small part looking at our real, no bullshit prehistory. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans existed. Our hardware is not that different from a human of 100,000 years ago, meaning our bodies, our brains. Yes, maybe if you exposed them to COVID 25, they would keel over in a second. But what I'm saying is that much of what we think that is you, like the sense of you, is being mechanical, coming from your brain, like a projection, like literally film coming through a light. It's not. Think of it more as that your hardware is like a computer. And so it's a hardware of 100,000 years ago is not that different than the hardware of now. Humans are pretty human from now and 100,000 years ago. So that means if you were able to snag somebody from 100,000 years ago, say a baby, you should, in theory, be able to rear them to be as functional as any other person, especially if they want to be an American politician. It's one of the lowest bars possible. As long as they can parrot and be a puppet, they can do it. And why is that even possible? Because we are software. A lot of what is us, what is you, what is me, is our software. We run on the same hardware, but our software can constantly change because that's written by our families, our societies, our groups, our educations, a lot of different things. But it's flexible, not unlike software. And that our history has shown that for the most part, we existed before even having language, definitely before written language. That's only 5,000 years old, people. So 95% of that time, we didn't have written language, but we were able to do amazing things, make stuff, work together, go from hunter gatherers to being able to cultivate and change our land. and in ways we don't even recognize because a lot of the history is gone. We were incredibly capable. And how were we able to do that? Because we're innately meant to work together. We're innately meant to problem solve and try to communicate our ideas in ways that we don't fundamentally understand right now, even though we're doing it as we speak. Our interpretations of how that actually works, at least the classical modern interpretations, might not actually make real sense against active inference and body cognition in the extended mind. There's nothing necessarily wrong with that. It's just that we have to be comfortable with that maybe reality is different than what we believe to be true. And then if we are together and it's okay, we can be okay because we're supposed to be together. We're supposed to be social animals. You're supposed to be able to determine reality through each other. What? Well, think about it. We talked about it. You alone can't determine what's real. How can you? How do you know it's not a hallucination? The only real way we determine 100% if things are real is when other people reinforce it that's happening. Why do you think you even have friends and circles of friends and reinforcements of these things? When you have these even negative, toxic relationships, it's still because, in no small part, these people help you reaffirm your models of the world. They are, in a lot of parts or a lot of ways, when you look at these groups of people, the joy of them getting together, from baseball fans to Trump fans to Kamala Harris fans at rallies, however you want to look at it, a lot of that enjoyment is that you were there with other people who sample the world the same as you. Even if they're the opponent's team, they sample the team, they sample the world the same as you. They understand the rules of the game. They understand why they're here. They understand that you don't get beer after the seventh inning, so forth, so on. Right? What I'm talking about is that we work in those ways. That's how we have understanding shared rules of reality, and that's how we work. We don't think about it. We don't think about a lot of these things, but we have been doing this without thinking, without labeling, without words, without writing for a lot longer than we think. In order to really understand what it is to be human, taking a real long, hard look at our real no bullshit history can show us that we are meant to work together. That there's a lot of magic and amazing cool shit about being a human that we don't give credit for, because if we did, we would have to change the way we view what it is to be human. That maybe it's not just all about us pulling ourselves by our own bootstraps and you alone figuring it out, and that you need to be eagle-eyed, and that it doesn't work that way, and that this is just rhetoric and just words and stories and forcing you to act out a role that maybe you're not meant to play, all under the guise of giving you the empowerment of your own free will. It's not necessarily true. And it's not that in some way that we lost what it was to be human when we got to agriculture. There's people who argue that that is what civilization ruined humanity. I don't know about you, but I love the internet. I love a lot of the things we do. I just think that we need to collectively, as citizens of the world, take ownership for the societies that run us. We haven't been in a place where we could actually do that. And I'm not talking about democracy. I'm talking about us individually understanding what it means to be us, and then being able to collectively decide in a way that we've never been able to do before, because we actually know far greater, far more granular detail what the truth is, what the reality is. We don't do that now. We have a tendency to argue in basic rhetoric: good, bad, who, right, right wing, left wing, Trump, Harris, Biden, evil, this ridiculous, over the top, oversimplified way. But because, again, being creatures of active inference and body cognition in the extended mind, that outside world, being able to feel more comfortable because you need to be with people and sampling the world together, you join a tribe. These systems are governed by your attention and your money, and you will give that to what reinforces what you believe to be true in this world. It has been an invisible tool that has been able to be utilized to fundamentally control you. And not that you don't need conspiracies, you don't need guys smoking in the back room. It's that these systems are self-governing in their own right, not by spooky action in a distance, just by nature, how they work. There is something to it. Economics, all these systems. How we run them is not necessarily natural, but there is a natural order to them and a rhythm and a mathematical understanding that allows them to perpetuate. We assign our stories and our meaning and all that to them, and we keep them going. And then they fail. But they fail because they're not what we think they are. We're surprised by the failing because, again, we act that they're one way when they're another. That's how society works. It's a bit of a step, it's a bit of a jump. People become uncomfortable with that idea, but fundamentally, society, civilization, is a platform by which people work together to do things at scale, and it needs to have a rhythm and a rhyme and a story behind it, and it does. And that story is fundamentally not true for most of the Western world, most of the developed world. That's what we talk about. It's not just to give myself like, oh, this is why I had my disease and this is why you shouldn't be upset at me. No, this is why we have the lowest birth rate in our recorded history in all of the most developed countries in the world. Because money and these things do not equate happiness. And these systems that we think are so fucking great are not so fucking great. But we need to be able to pause and identify that they're not. And when we assign our identity and our meaning and our purpose into those things, because we don't know any better, it's hard for us to even look at them. It's hard for us to make any level of adjustment. It's hard for us to actually even experience any form of challenge to those ideas in anything other than hostility or challenge. That is, in fact, why, for the most part, it's almost impossible to move past some of these things because of that innate part of the argument. In creatures of certainty, I'm challenging your certainty in the world, so it's easier to turn off that signal by not listening anymore than updating what you believe to be true. Well, you can turn it off. You don't have to listen. You can assign that the guy's an asshole. For example, Trump. Some people will think Trump's an asshole. I think Trump's an asshole. I'm not going to vote for Trump, but I'm not going to vote for Biden. I'm not going to vote for Harris. All right. I'm not going to vote for our born brain either. Right. I have problems with the system. The problem is, and part of that problem is that if I am not against the guy, I am evil. I am this. I am that. Why aren't you playing in? Playing into the system is part of the problem. Being able to look at it for what it is part of the solutions, but that's what we can't do. We can stand outside of it and go, everything's stupid and just make fun of the whole thing and just not get it. There's all sorts of things we can do. The hard thing to do is to stand with something that you give a shit about and be able to look at it honestly, earnestly, and try to understand what's happening. And while doing that, realizing that some of the stuff and the conclusions you're going to come to, you may not like, that might not match up to what you believe to be true. If you're capable of doing that, you are far more powerful than you ever thought. That's what I'm talking about. That's what this active inference and body cognition and the extended mind and all of my ramblings about it have done, is it allows me to be able to take pause and look at these things that are uncomfortable in a way where I can analyze them, where to the point where I can hold them where they're not uncomfortable anymore, and I feel better about it. And what I mean by I feel better about it is I don't generate fear, anxiety. I don't necessarily feel happy about it. It doesn't alter me. I can allow it to be. I can accept it. And that's what I'm talking about. And that's what we continue to explore. And I'm going to be having Spaces on X. Join us on X, Self-Gen Podcast. Feel free to throw any comments in the show note or throw any comments in the notes if you're listening on YouTube. But otherwise, talk to you soon.